Florida State has another player opting to head to the NFL draft and skip the Orange Bowl. This time, not a giant surprise, but what a giant impact that defensive end Jared Verse had on this football program. Joined by the founder and administrator of Warchant.com, Gene Williams. My name is Tom Lang. You're watching Warchant TV. And Gene, there's a list of players that we expected to not see play in Florida State's next football game since they got snubbed by the College Football Playoff, or should I say Invitational Selection Committee. And once that happened, Jared Verse, given that he has a high NFL grade, was going to be one of those players we thought might be down there in street clothes if they're there at all.
Yeah, I'd say if I was coming up with a list after the infamous snub by the committee that were guys that were not going to play in the bowl and we're going to declare, I would say I'd put Keon Coleman and Jared Verse there, 1A, 1AB, whatever it is. I mean, it's obvious these guys are both, almost every mock draft you look at, they're first rounders. I just looked. Athletic has Verse 17, Yahoo 11, and last I saw Mel Kiper's big board had him 15. But the bottom line is, look, if you're going to be a mid first round pick, I don't think anybody blames him. Go cash in, have a great NFL career. And he obviously did wonders for Florida State. I think it really adds a lot of credibility coming off what Jermaine Johnson did at Florida State, and then have Verse come and equal him in terms of the impact he had at that position and how good he was for Florida State for the last 2 seasons. It's been remarkable. It's a lot of fun to watch him. I know he had a giggle in that Florida game, what I call the Waffle House sack he had. I'm sure he's going to do great things in the NFL.
Yeah, this is a player who, Gene, it's an interesting storyline for Jared. He was wanted by primarily Tennessee and Florida State out of Albany, and it became a Vols versus Seminoles battle in Florida State Security Services, largely because Jermaine Johnson put in a good word and said that if you come transfer here, they're going to make you a very good player. Splashy in the stats, Gene, in his first year on campus, I think 17 tackles for loss in 2022. Fans were waiting for an explosion, an eruption from Jared Verse in terms of productivity for a while this season, but a lot of double teams, a lot of extra attention paid to Jared Verse, but they got that finish, that flourish that they were looking for in the Seminoles' final 2 games of this season.
Man, you're absolutely right. When Florida State really needed, I think that was one of the things that was so special about the 2023 team. When the defense was struggling, especially early on in some games, the offense kept up. When the offense struggled at times, the defense came up. In those last couple games without, obviously, the man Jordan Travison, everybody knew the defense had to step up. And a guy that, was kind of up and down and really, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to mock drafts and what they say during the season. But you could see a lot of him, he was kind of slipping down late in that first round. And because he was okay, but he wasn't the dominating end that we saw before. But boy, as you mentioned, Tom, those last couple games, he was insane. I mean, he was unblockable. He was the best defensive end, I think, in the country the last couple of weeks of what he was able to do. You just look at those numbers. This is Pro Football Focus that you've got up right now. 18 pressures in the last 2 games. And there's a reason why Florida State was so dominant on defense, and he's one of them. The pass rush was relentless, and he led the way between what he was doing, and they paid too much attention. If Fisk would get after it or Peyton would get after it, it was a beauty to behold if you're a defensive aficionado of football. And any slight doubt that he was going to be a first rounder, I think, was completely erased in those last 2 weeks. Again, wish him well. He's going to do extremely well. But yeah, those last 2 weeks, and we saw the fully unleashed Jared Verse.
Yeah, that's the right way to put it. And, Gene, that was the hardest part. We did a lot of these shows on the infamous Saturday and Sunday of championship weekend and the selection day for Florida State. And the thing that leaves the bitter taste in your mouth is with the invitational field that they have, those 4 teams, everybody was susceptible to what this defensive line could do. That nobody was immune to what this Florida State defensive line was about to do in that particular Final Four setting, because they had gone to a different place. And Gene, by the end of his career, I was looking at Florida State, the almanac, the record books for Florida State in terms of the stats that they put together officially themselves. In terms of tackles for loss, career leaders for Florida State, Jared Verse now finishes his career tied for 19th in program history with 29.5 tackles for loss with linebacker Geno Smith. And when you look at this list of players in the history of Florida State, in terms of sack totals and tackle for loss totals, just generally speaking, these are 3- and 4-year players racking up big numbers. Jared was able to crack the top 20 in just 2 seasons in the tackles for loss department. All the while, Gene, again, for the first half of this season, but more than the first half of this season, you saw all of the extra attention that was paid to Jared Verse. Now, as a guy like Fisk developed, Fabian Lovett had a better end to his season. Patrick Payton on the other side of the defensive line. As those things happened, Jared was in more one-on-ones, and then he was just simply dominant down the stretch. This is a story that, while for the 2023 Noles, it will always be a bitter taste in fans' mouths, this was a successful relationship between these two players, and he is absolutely, Gene, a legacy player for Florida State, because even after the 13-0 run and Florida State got left out, Jared Verse was helping Florida State recruit both transfers and high school defensive linemen. He was here on campus facilitating those visits. Just a selfless player, much like Jermaine Johnson before him.
Yeah, it's amazing how well they've done there, those transfers at that position. I think you got to give some credit also to John Papuchis, what he's been able to do developing these two guys. I mean, they were both raw coming in, and they leave as finely tuned prospects to go on to the next level. And one obviously is in the next level and having some success. And I expect Jared Verse to do the same. But I mean, this resonates, and this will help Florida State down the road in terms of recruiting, because they've proven it. It wasn't a one-off with Jermaine. This is a thing. You come here with some talent, you're going to get developed here. And like you said, Tom, these guys, because I think of the coaching staff, the chemistry of this team, their interactions with them, they are loyal now to Florida State. I would not be surprised if Jared Verse is just like Jermaine Johnson in terms of constantly supporting Florida State, coming back to visit, supporting them on social media, helping them recruit. And how much a part did that pay? And maybe Marvin Jones Jr. coming here already, because you've got the proven product to come in. There's obviously an opening on the roster for another end to come in, so I think it helps you with stuff like that. So it's great. This is becoming defensive NU, and he's doing that's really awesome that Verse has been able to be a part of that process.
I remember 2 years ago when he first set foot on campus, he did some interviews before playing in Florida State, because he was highly touted. Even though he was from Albany, people had expectations. And I remember he was on our network with our own Jeff Cameron. And after the interview, Jeff just shot him a text to say, "Thank you, appreciate the time." And Jared's response, Gene, was, "Thank you, I appreciate it. I look forward to exceeding your expectations."
Wow.
And that was his response. And that's exactly what Jared Verse did in his career at Florida State. That's the team side of things. We're going to be covering everything between now and kickoff against Georgia, 4 p.m. on December the 30th in the Orange Bowl. We got pregame and postgame coverage. There's just this little event that's happening in between then, and it starts on Wednesday, December 20th. Most of you are going to be watching this on Tuesday. It is Walk-Ons Signing Day Live, streaming live on Warchant TV across all of those platforms you see on the screen: YouTube, Facebook Live, X, IG Live. It is a wall-to-wall show, 7 hours plus.
Woo!
I think we might go a little bit longer, but 7 hours plus, kind of like your red zone of coverage here on Warchant TV. It's going to be a wild day for Florida State as it stands on the eve of the early signing day. Florida State has a top 5 class in the On3 industry rankings, but this year's program begins 8 a.m. Wednesday morning, Eastern Standard Time. It'll be Aslan Hajavandi, Michael Langston. A bunch of us on staff will be popping in. Our thanks to Walk-Ons for sponsoring that particular feature. But, Gene, it's going to be a busy day as Florida State looks to round out the next wave of Noles that we can do videos like this 3 and 4 years down the line saying they're heading to the NFL.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's been a while since we've talked about Florida State having a top 5 class. We're going back to the old days, which is the good old days, I should say, because they were good old days. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, who will be the next great defensive end? I mean, maybe we'll find out that day. So I'm looking forward to it. And, I know you, Michael Langston, Matt Lasser, Jeff Cameron's going to be involved. Obviously, Aslan's going to direct this whole thing from beginning. And you're going to get a little taste of everybody this week. And then, after that, it's like, we're not done. We have coach's press conference. We're going to probably, Coach Norvell and all the assistants talking about this class later that day. So stay tuned. It's going to be a lot of fun the next couple of days.
Well, and who knows? I mean, we sign on every 15. December's the weirdest month in college football these days, because then you got transfer portal news, inside out, NFL declarations, things along those lines. Stay tuned to Warchant TV. It's absolutely free when you hit the subscribe button and hit this like video. Underneath the video helps us find more Florida State fans who are looking for great news like we have at warchant.com and Warchant TV. Jared Verse, we salute you. Bigger and better things at the NFL level for you. He's Gene Williams. My name is Tom Lang. We'll talk to you next time on Warchant TV.